Hello there, my friends. You're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. This is episode number 194. Tonight we are talking about the Sligo Bones, Rites of Passage. Stay tuned for the next hour or so, maybe an hour and a half. We will be taking a fascinating look at a scientific study of bones retrieved from the Carrowkeel complex over 100 years ago, only recently subjected to intense study. We are simultaneously live streaming on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mythical Ireland, and of course on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Mythical Ireland. If you are dropping in, please do say hello in the chat. We will say hello back. You're all very welcome. The evenings are darkening fast. We are now at the stage where, at the beginning of our live stream at 8 p.m., we're in sort of semi-twilight, beginning to get dark. So in a couple of weeks' time, we will be back to the old winter darkness again. Yes, tonight's live stream, I hope, will fascinate you. I can tell you that the material absolutely fascinates me, very much so. Tonight, joining us, and the first one to comment tonight is Karen Murphy-Beglin. Hello, Karen. Very good evening to you. And I'm sure Adrian isn't too far away. Elaine Dent-Lingenfelter says, hello, Anthony Murphy. Well, hello, Elaine Dent-Lingenfelter. How are you? Good to see you. Helen Hirsch Chatter says, greetings, friends. And greetings, Sláinte Mochara. And Trononawa Conasatatu. Mariana Dunn is saying Banachty, dear Tua and Anthony from Virginia. Hi, Mariana. I remember the days early on in the live streams when I used to ask you if that was Virginia in County Cavan or Virginia in the US, and you did clarify it's Virginia in the US. There is Mr. Beglin. Adrian, hello. Good evening to you and welcome along. Terry Connolly is in the house. Hello, Terry. A very good evening. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoy the live stream. Stacey Herman Lawrence is checking in from Ohio. I hope all are well today. Well, I can only speak for myself, but I'm okay. I'm good. Mandy McCurl says, hello from a pewter twilight on the Isle of Mull. We're not even at the point where the sun is on the celestial equator yet. It's not even rising east and setting west just yet, although it's not far off it. We're only halfway. If you think about it, we're not even halfway between, the longest day and the shortest day. And already the days kind of feel, you're like, in your head, you're just saying, no, this is, it gets much shorter than this. No, it can't. But then it does. Catherine Woodruff is saying hello from central Wisconsin, having a classic Irish soft day. Well, we had a lot of rain on Sunday, but we had a powerfully beautiful day on Saturday. It was gorgeous, hot, sunny, and then it rained all day Sunday into this morning. And Scott Doherty saying hello from Grants Pass, Oregon, where the wildfires are still burning. Well, we hope that you are staying safe and sound, Anne, and that those fires are at a distance and not anywhere near you. Barbara Barney's in the house. Jigwich, Barbara Conasatatu. Tara Sky Dressler is in Pincher Creek in Alberta in Canada. And I wonder, Tara, if your days are similarly contracting in length rapidly. Stephen Walker, which I suspect they are, you would be at a similar latitude to us. Stephen Walker's in the house. Hello, Stephen. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. Michael Trott is saying hello from Portrush in the north of Ireland, visiting from New Zealand. Wow, you have come a long way, Michael, and it's very, very nice to welcome you to the island. A very, very good evening to you. I hope you're enjoying things in Northern Ireland. Archaeoastronomy Database, whose tie says autumn is in the air, very much so. Certainly in terms of the rapidity with which the days are shortening. Wayne Bird's in the house. Hello, Anthony. Hope all's well. All good, Wayne. Hope all well with you. Gillian Stapleton is saying hello to everybody. Gillian, a warm welcome to you. Marcia Downs is in the house. Sláinte Marcia. Hope you are well. Les McAnulty is saying Farwa from the Isle of Lewis. Oh, nice. And I hope again that, I hope the weather's nice up there. But Yeah, your winter days are slightly shorter than ours, given that you're a bit further north. Joe Butler is in beautiful Colorado. Shared the live stream to Mythical Ireland Creatives and the Mythical Ireland community pages. Thank you very much, Auntie Joe. You are very, very good. Janet Moran is in a warm, humid Boston. But we cannot escape the inevitability that winter is coming. Winter is coming. Wow, Helen got her Duolingo Irish trophy. I caught the Gaeilge. That's brilliant. You can probably speak it better than I can. That's fantastic. Daisy Peters is in the house. Really glad to join you all. Well, we are glad that you are joining us, Daisy. Caitlin Moon is in a dreary Dublin, trying the YouTube for a change. Brilliant stuff, Caitlin. And it's quite clear here. I mean, the sun has gone down, but the sky is blue. No clouds. Is it cloudy in Dublin? Sorry to hear that. Chungus Khan is in Maryland, County Anne Arundel, Republic of Irish America. Yes, indeed. Chungus, a very good afternoon to you. Are you anything to Genghis? Never mind. Or Aga? Aga can't. Never mind. Erica Bow is in the house. Good afternoon to you, Erica. Great to see you on the live stream. It's all. Les is wondering, is it all? I hope to listen to the whole shebang later. I love that phrase, the whole shebang. Yes, it is recorded and will be available immediately after we finish on YouTube and on Facebook. Indira Stefaniana is in Hollywood, where sunsets have been red from fires. A tropical storm helped them down. Oh, I heard there was some rain, yeah, which was more than welcome. Yes, indeed. Brendan Byrne is have to go for a sing-song with someone in Glendalough. That sounds fabulous. I mean, in the grounds of the old cemetery, or in the proximity to St. Kevin's Church and the Round Tower, or down by one of the lakes, or in a pub. Even better again, says you. No, I'm not sure that's even better again. Anyway, yes, cloudy and drizzly all day here, says Caitlin. Wow. 30 miles south. You'll have to forgive my dog. Well, one of my dogs. The vocal one, Coda, is making himself heard. Soliv is in the house. Banathy, Dochach, Os, Chiron. Hi, Anthony, Joe, and my dear friend Indira. Love to everyone. Yes, indeed, Soliv. A very good evening to you, and thanks for joining us. And great to see you. Anne McCallum says hello to all the way to Tua. Hope all is well, whatever. Sorry, I can't stay. Just pop in and say hello. We'll catch up later. That's grand, Anne. No problem. And we know that life doesn't always stop for Live Irish Myths. It does most of the time, but sometimes other things, have to be done. Henry is in the house. Trononoa, Henry, and you're very, very welcome to Live Irish Myths. Miriam McChira, who is, I remembered it after, like the last time your name came up, I said, I can't remember. It's Miriam Eckhart. Miriam, how are you? Giga Chanson, nice to listen while trying to work the first day after taking bereavement. I'm sorry to hear that, Miriam. I'm not aware of the details of that, but very sorry for your bereavement, and glad to have you joining us. Anya Ryan is wondering if Brendan is going sing-songing with someone famous, like, and now the penny drops 5 minutes later. Like, now I know what he's talking about. Garth Brooks, the very famous singer, visited Glendalough today. Yeah. Thank you, Brendan. That's going to be one of those replays where I'm just going to, if ever I watch it again, I'll just be going, oh, Anthony, you really fell for that one, didn't you? Brilliant. Samantha Healy's in the house. Hello, Samantha. Sláinte. Finn says hello to Coda, says Janet. Woof, woof. Don't encourage him. I know, he's grand. He's just rather excitable. My father passed last week. Well, you have our sincere sympathies and condolences, Miriam. Very, very sorry to hear that. And I'm sure everyone on the live stream will join in with me in saying that we are sorry for your very sad loss and your bereavement. And it's good to have you here. And hopefully having you here among friends will assuage some of your sadness for the moment. Rex Fortenberry is in the house. Banachty, Louisiana. Grianvar, did you say it's sunny? Spread it around, I say. Spread it around. Caitlin Moons suggests that Brendan and Garth Brooks are going to get Glenda locked. I like it. That's like one of my awful dad jokes. Not often I get one over on the seer of knowledge. I don't know who you're talking about. I'm the seer of bad jokes. That's what I am. Anyway, just to cheer you up, my boss told me during the week that he's going to fire the employee with the worst posture. I have a hunch it's going to be me. Don't laugh. Definitely don't encourage it. We are at 11 minutes past 8 now, and the camera. I have to get something to do with so the camera doesn't block the any screen. Tonight, we are talking about the Sligo monuments, and so I have to preface this with a little bit of information and a little bit of detail. What follows is I have an academic paper here that was actually published in 2018 by 6 experts, 6 academic scholars in various disciplines, and it's fascinating. It's deeply fascinating. I'm conscious of the fact that it is copyrighted. I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously. I don't want to breach copyright. I will read certain little snippets from it, and then I will try to paraphrase and summarize as much of it as possible. I think you are going to find this extraordinary, as I did. Somebody's saying hello to Tom. Is Tom King in the house? I didn't see him. Tom King, what is the story? Are you here? Make yourself known, man. Yes, Wayne is saying, hello, Tom. Hope you're well. Crescent moon looking good. Thank you. My triple spiral, my Triskel pendant. So I have before I start, there is a bit of an announcement, and that is that the Mythical Ireland website, which was relaunched in 2017, was created by a web designer, and it is what we would call a bespoke website. It's not based on any template in particular. It was his own creation. Unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond his control and beyond my control, he is unable to look after the website in the future. As a result of that, a new version of mythicalireland.com is currently being developed and worked on. The hope is that it won't be very different from what's there already. You will notice some change. Hopefully, it's going to be all done and dusted in about 2 to 3 weeks' time. But the website, as you know it, is going to change. Now, all of the information that's on there and all the photographs and all the products, the books and the, Tom's creations and the photography and the calendars, etc., they will come back just in a slightly different form. That's all. It will look a little bit different, but the hope is that it won't look drastically different. So that's going on in the background at the moment. That's a rather big change, but it's a good change, I think, as well. I want to say hello to Regina Riley. Regina, you're the same Regina. I met you at Brelay, didn't I, at Arda on the Bilberry Sunday walk. If you just confirm that I'm not mixing you up with somebody, you introduced yourself to me there, and if that is you, a very good evening to you. And even if it isn't you, a very good evening to you. Hope you're in good form, and great to see you on here. Desiree Riley's in the house. Heading on a trail ride, listening until I lose service. Hope everyone is well. Brilliant stuff, Desiree. And Coda says hello. And we'll, if we lose you, if we lose contact, you'll be able to watch back later on, I hope. Daisy's already looking forward to hearing about the issues. Stephen Walker is curious. It's actually Shopify, Stephen. So I'm going with something that I know is, in terms of what a lot of other people are using, very dependable and constantly up to date. So that's Shopify plus a certain number of add-on apps. The important thing is that the articles, and especially the blog, which is the one that gets sort of updated most regularly, will be still a central and essential part of the site. Yes, that was me, says Regina. Brilliant stuff. Excellent. And it's good to see you. And I was delighted to meet you that day. Stephen says it's good. It's great for e-commerce. Yeah, well, that's the other thing. That a critique of the Mythical Ireland website by a professional business person, or a number of them actually, was that in order to find my books and the stuff that people might want to buy, it took too many clicks. That you had to go into the menu, click on shop, click on books, click on my books, click on the book that you wanted before you get to click and put it in the basket. Whereas with Shopify, you know, some of the products will be visible on the homepage, and there'll be a plus sign or an add to basket sign available, and you just click that and it's immediately in your basket. So I think that'll make a big difference. Kerem Gogus has joined us. Hello, Kerem, my good friend, my wonderful 3D artist who has created so much fantastic work, including a wonderful recreation of Drone Henge. Sue Prenter's in the house. Happy clicking. Very good evening to you, Sue. Barbara Murphy's in the house as well. Barbara is saying, enjoy the ride to Desiree, who's way off on a trail. I hope she retains service, but you have to look after the horse. You know, you can't be commenting on a live stream and riding a horse at the same time, you know. Anyway, let's get back to it. I'm conscious of the fact that I'm after using another 5 minutes there. So the Carrowkeel, yeah, we showed you some of this last week. Of course, we were talking about the alignment between Cairns at Sligo Loch Crew towards the cairn on the top of Keshcorran, which is one of those big hills as part of the complex. Now, I go to share. I want to show you this map. This is from the paper that I'm going to read from. The paper, by the way, is called Rites of Passage, Mortuary Practice, Population Dynamics, and Chronology at the Carrowkeel Passage Tomb Complex, County Sligo, Ireland. So just want to show you this for a moment. Here we go. Now, am I able to say... you can't see my cursor, I don't. Can you see the cursor there? Perhaps just very quickly, somebody could tell me, can you see the little hand icon moving around? Because I would love to be able to sort of point out the individual details here. Tarini Pendleton has joined us from Laguna Beach in California. Tarini, very good afternoon. Yes. Loads of people saying it's brilliant. Okay, so here is the Brickleave Mountains of Carrowkeel overlooking Loch Arrow, and then Shiluy, which is associated with Moitura, which is where the mythological battles took place. But the best known cairn of the whole complex really is Cairn G. I think perhaps some of the Sligo natives might dispute that, but I think Cairn G and those cairns there, G, H, K, and L, are the best known. They're the ones that people tend to visit the most. G is the one that has the roof box or the false lintel on it and opens up towards the northwest. Well, a lot of the cairns at this complex are oriented towards the northwest, looking back towards Sligo and Knocknarea with Queen Maeve's cairn and Ballygawley and sort of further to the right. And then way out to the west, you have Keshcorran. And on the very western edge of Keshcorran are the famous caves of Keshcorran. Well, there's only one cairn, one prominent cairn on Keshcorran. That's Cairn Q. That was the subject of our live stream last week when we spoke about the cairn, which is... get it out, Anthony. The cairn to which, or towards which, the passage of Cairns at Loch Crew is pointing, which is 94 kilometers distant, or 58 and a half miles. So that is the there's Cairn Q. And this is actually the highest part of the whole complex. The complex is referred to as one by the archaeologists. They call it the Carrowkeel / Keshcorran complex. Not entirely sure in which circumstances Keshcorran is two words and in which it is one, and I see it regularly written both ways. Anyway, let me just stop that for a moment. And in case you weren't able to join us last week, just give me one moment. Yeah, this takes a little bit of, as the man says, a little bit of fiddling. A little bit of fiddling around to get some of this stuff up on the screen. So in case you missed it, apologies for this, my dear people, my good friends, my very, very patient viewers. Some of you have gone already. Sorry. Okay. In case you missed last week's live stream, it is available to view on YouTube and on Facebook. Sorry about that. So this is what we were talking about last week. This is the view towards Keshcorran from Cairns at Loughcrew. These intervening hills, these two. Sorry, I need to show you this. I have my cursor on the wrong screen. That's why you can't see it. This hill here and this one with the trees on them are in County Longford. And this very distant hill is the top of the long ridge of Keshcorran. And just here on its northern or right hand, as you look at it, end is the cairn of Keshcorran. And that's what we were talking about last week. So all part of the one complex. Let's get on with it because I need to move because there's so much stuff to cover. Anyway, I'm going to read the summary, the introduction. Also to mention that this paper was compiled by Thomas Cador, Lara Cassidy, Johnny Geber, Robert Hensey, Pádraig Meehan, and Sam Moore. And they're from a multiplicity of disciplines. And the reason for that will become clear because this is a multidisciplinary study. It isn't just a single stranded study, which makes it exceptionally fascinating. The first detailed investigation of the human remains from the Carrowkeel passage tomb complex since their excavation in 1911, so we're talking about 111 years ago, has revealed several new and important insights about life, death, and mortuary practice in Neolithic Ireland. Osteological analysis provides the first conclusive proof, by the way, osteological, in case you didn't know it, relating to the bones, the first conclusive proof for the occurrence of dismemberment of the dead at Irish passage tombs, practiced contemporarily with cremation as one of a suite of funerary treatments. If you've read my Mythical Ireland book, first published in 2017, you'll know that there's a very short chapter in there in which I deal with the question as to why we don't know more about how the dead were treated in the Neolithic. Well, we know a lot more now. Stay tuned and sit yourself comfortably. The research also highlights changes in burial tradition at the complex over the course of the Neolithic. Providing a chronology for these changes allows them to be linked to wider trends in monument construction, which may relate to changes in both land use and climate during the period. Multi-isotope analysis hints at the presence of non-local individuals among the interred and the possible existence of different food sourcing areas at the onset of the later Neolithic period. Preliminary results from ancient DNA sequencing of 6 individuals from Carrowkeel provide evidence for the genetic ancestry of Irish Neolithic populations, demonstrating their Anatolian origins and links along the Atlantic facade. Anatolia being Turkey, what we would call, Anatolia is in modern day Turkey, but that is the place of origin, as it were, of the people who built the great monuments of Neolithic Ireland. Mark Gordon is in the house. Hello, Mark. Hope you're in good form. Thank you for joining us. So, RAS Macalister, who was known as an archaeologist, although he was a bit of a tomb raider and a tomb wrecker, perhaps a little bit of a controversial figure on account of the fact that they weren't as careful in those days about how they excavated monuments as they are today. He and a team that he had assembled began investigations at Carrowkeel in April of 1911. So at the time this paper was written, the excavations were, 107 years previous. Over 18 days between April and October, they investigated 14 cairns, of which they excavated 8, with 7 revealing internal chambers containing a combination of cremated and unburnt human and animal bone, and a number of objects, including bone pins and beads and pottery and all that sort of stuff. Now, what's fascinating about this is that the bones that were removed from the Carrowkeel cairns by Macalister and his team in 1911 went missing, and were actually only rediscovered by chance in the year, well, it says 2001 to 2002, at the Duckworth Laboratory, which is now the Leverhulme Centre for Human Evolutionary Studies in Cambridge. And that discovery was made by Alison Sheridan, who's principal curator at the National Museum of Scotland. Despite its rediscovery, the collection of bones was not subject to any major analysis or any investigative techniques at all until the present study was established in 2013. The present study concluding with this paper, which was published, by the way, in the Proceedings of the Prehistoric Society. Yeah, this is. Oh, I really think you're going to enjoy this. I hope you are, anyway. So yeah, basically, hi Nora Gaffney O'Connor has joined us. I hope you're in good form, and I hope that the sea was nice today if you were in it. You know, one of the problems with early excavation, as in pre-latter half of the 20th century excavation, is that the techniques employed were different, and that a proper recording of such things as stratigraphy just wasn't done by and large. Not exclusively, and that's maybe a sweeping statement, and there were some very, very good archaeologists who were very careful, but Macalister and friends were not all that careful. But in fairness, at least the bones were preserved. I don't think we know where the bones that were excavated in the 1860s at Lough Crew by Eugene Conwell are. Mandy, the paper is available to download, so I'll just give you the name of it again: Rites of Passage, Mortuary Practice, Population Dynamics and Chronology at the Carrowkeel Passage Tomb Complex, County Sligo, Ireland. Can't remember where I downloaded it, to be honest with you. I have a shed load of papers that I have downloaded from the internet and from JSTOR and others, several hundred actually, that I've downloaded over the last number of years. So I suppose one of the problems in general in relation to Irish, what we call passage tombs, or in mythology they're called the She, has been, up until recent times, has been the lack of dates, first of all, which led a generation ago, say 1980s, 1990s. It's not that long ago, and I can remember when I began my research that it was a big claim of some of the modern authors about ancient Ireland. And now I say authors, these people were not archaeologists or anthropologists, and not perhaps academic specialists in any way. But some of these people were questioning the whole narrative about whether the tombs, whether the bones that were found in Irish passage tombs actually dated to the time when the archaeologists say that the tombs were built. Now, we now know absolutely without a doubt that the answer is yes. A lot of the bone material that was recovered from the passage tombs, such as at Knowth and Newgrange, have been dated. Our friend NG10, about which we did an episode, I think it was episode 98, 99, 100, 101, that sort of time. We did a couple of episodes about incest and about the incestuous union, which led to the birth of the man that was found in the excavations of Newgrange. Sue Prenter saying this is available online at cambridge.org. Gordon Farrell is in the house. Very good evening to you, Gordon. Hope you're in good form. And Nora apologizes. She's not supposed to be sending. She didn't intend to send angry faces, angry face emojis. So only a limited amount of reliable dating evidence has been available in the past, is what the authors say. So the wider chronology of these sites is actually still a matter of debate, you know. So the possibility of obtaining a new range of dates from the bones retrieved from Carrowkeel over a century ago, lost and then found again in Cambridge, it was really an excellent opportunity. And I think you'll agree when we hear some of the findings of this wonderful study and this remarkable study. I think you'll agree. It's amazing how these are forensic sciences, and these are the people employed in these sciences I have no doubt, are going to crack many ancient mysteries and they're answering over the past 5 to 10 years, particularly in the area of DNA genomics. They are answering some of the questions that we have had or we've been asking for generations. So there was also a long-standing perception that cremation was the primary method or the primary funerary rite in the Neolithic. And this is also recently coming under the spotlight and coming up for the debate. One of the problems that the authors of the paper or the study had was, definitively connecting the bones that had been recovered in Cambridge with the Carrowkeel cairns. And of course, another major disadvantage is the fact that while RAS Macalister and his colleagues did take care to note which cairns, which bones came from, the difficulty is that in many cases, the actual setting or the surrounds or the material among which those bones were found is not often recorded. They did find that is the authors of the paper when this material was analysed in 2012, which is 10 years ago now, and remember exactly a century after Macalister had published his report into the excavations, I have to say excavations, in 1911. So the year after was 1912 was when he published a report, and a century on from that, this material is beginning to be analysed. And the tomb labelling systems associated with the collection in Cambridge did not match that published by Macalister. So the first thing that had to happen was that these experts had to study the labelling system and to identify which cairns were which. It appears that 2 monument identification systems were employed, an alphabetical and a numerical one. In the excavation report in 1912, Macalister and colleagues described the alphabetical label of 14 individual sites. And that's the system, by the way, that is still used today. The system that sees Cairn G is the one with the roof box. Cairn Q is the one on the top of Keshcorran, and so on and so on. Yeah, so here is a summary of the analysis of the remains and what there were 4 distinct, I suppose you could call them branches of science, or 4 distinct techniques. Osteological analysis, well, that's obviously the study of the bones. AMS radiocarbon dating. So that's important because there's no point in trying to run all the other tests if the bones that you're running the tests on don't actually date to the time of the tombs, or when the tombs were in use. In other words, from when they were buried there. Isotope analysis and aDNA sequencing, and aDNA is short for ancient DNA. Now, there's quite a lot of detail in this paper, technical detail, if you want it. I am not obviously going to go into the technical detail just at this moment in time to try and keep things moving along, and to try and keep things as straightforward as possible for a non-specialist audience. By the way, that includes me. I'm a journalist and a writer. I'm not an archaeologist, and I'm not a geneticist. So I'm just doing my best to try and translate, as it were, or paraphrase to help you. So the human and animal bone, important to point out, there were animal bones in the assemblages as well, not just human bones. And there were animal bones that were deposited in the tombs. They didn't just find their way in accidentally there, like our 3 dog skeletons in Newgrange that Professor O'Kelly once upon a time thought might have strayed in there and not been able to get out again, when in fact we later found out that they were actually buried in prehistory. So the carbon dating was conducted on 38 samples, 29 on human bone, from 27 individuals, which is fascinating. So that's quite a good sample, 8 on cremated red deer antler and 1 on a canid tooth, which is either from a dog or a wolf. Important to point out too that I think it will be pointed out at some point, at some stage, that cremation is very destructive to DNA. That's why our friend in Newgrange, NG10, it's a funny thing, about how he had incestuous parentage, and how he seems to have been the only one of the 5 individuals represented in the bones found in Newgrange. The only one who hadn't been excavated, the only one who hadn't been cremated, and you just wonder whether he was afforded different or special treatment. But this paper, I think, does help us with all of that. The human bone from Carrowkeel comprised 9.7 kilograms of unburnt and 5.7 kilograms of cremated, commingled remains, representing a minimum number of 18 unburnt and 22 cremated individuals. Fascinating stuff. So Macalister had originally estimated that 31 individuals were represented by these bone material, and when in fact the true figure is 29. He wasn't far off, considering he didn't have access to the battery of techniques with which we can now find out so much, I'm just quickly scooting. Macalister stated that many of the people buried in the cairns were under 25 years of age, but the presence of older individuals can be ascertained from progressed stages of attritional tooth wear, or probably from eating grains, from chewing grains and all that sort of stuff. Among the... See, this is all very technical, and I wanted to just... Yeah, no, that's too technical. You can read it, download it from the internet yourself and read it. Now, there's a lot of highlighted sections here, so this is where it starts to get exciting. Josie Weatherford is just back from an art opening on the landscape of the bogs here in Rathfarnham, and Moncalm McGann was opening. Very nice, at the Pierce Museum. If any local people have a chance to go, sounds brilliant. And sorry I wasn't there. Lar Dooley is in the house. A very good evening to you, Lar. I hope you're well. Closer macroscopic examination revealed cut marks on at least 12 bones. And of course, these bones derived from a minimum of 1 adult individual. The bones were present in cairns H and K, and from a mixed sample from unknown contexts. They revealed an aspect of the post-mortem funerary rite in the Neolithic, which until this discovery has rarely been reported from Irish osteoarchaeological evidence, with only 2 other examples from Carrowmore in County Sligo and Millen Bay in County Down. The distribution of the cut marks suggests that they had been inflicted as part of a dismemberment process rather than defleshing. Now, if you're sensitive about these things or queasy in nature, you may want to switch off at this point, or you may want to go and boil the kettle, because we are, after all, talking about something that, to us, from a modern perspective, may seem brutal and gruesome and sickening, but undoubtedly, for the people of that time, this was an entirely natural part of the process of being what we might call a Neolithic undertaker. Today, the dead are treated hugely differently to how they were treated back then. So the difference is, what we're talking about here, of course, is defleshing, is the removal of the flesh. Sometimes that happened, or it seems that the suggestion is a lot of that happened on raised platforms. The four poster late Neolithic monuments of Brunabonia, for instance, it has been proposed may have been platforms where the carrion, the birds strip away the flesh, or the flesh is naturally left, or in some cases a body was placed in a cave and the bones retrieved a year later or a couple of years later when all the flesh had been either eaten away or just rotted away. But the dismemberment, of course, is the actual removal of the limbs. So look, don't think about it too much. That's all I can say, because you'll start to think of horror movies. So the joints affected were the shoulder, elbow, hip, knee, and the ankle/foot. And the precision and the consistency of the cuts indicates that they were undertaken by somebody with particular anatomical knowledge and skill that targeted specific tendons and ligaments. So this isn't at all random. This study is very considered, careful, and detailed. So what they're saying is, whoever was doing the dismemberment knew what he or she was doing. There are some a significant portion of animal remains actually retrieved by Macalister and friends and colleagues, representing 6 mammal species: cattle, caprivine, sheep or goat, pig, red deer, canid, or canid, either a dog or a wolf, and hare, as well as a single bone fragment from a gull. This is an interesting one. The excavation report compiled by Macalister mentions a worked bear bone in Cairn G, but no evidence of that was found during this analysis. And the authors wonder whether this comment by Macalister may refer to a worked bone pin, which is currently housed in the National Museum of Ireland, marked in ink with fibula, bear, cairn eye central recess. And it's not possible to identify this specimen. We'll talk about the animal remains, in particular the red deer, momentarily. Now, this is really, really fascinating. Ben is saying same technique is used in Tibet to this day. There are probably still some, I mean, these would be referred to by some modern scholars, well, some recent era scholars, as primitive and what's the other word? Savage. But look, it's just different, you know. This is fascinating. All of the 38 samples from the 1911 excavations returned Neolithic dates. There ain't no doubt here, folks. That, I think, finally puts to bed any of those suggestions that you hear. And that actually, in my early days of my own research and my own website, I probably would have questioned the whole thing about, well, how do we know these bones are from the Neolithic? These could be later burials. And in fact, now, look, we know. And this, I think, is quite definitive. More specifically, at 95.4% confidence, they range between roughly 3,000, this is the beginning, 3,641 to 3,381 Cal BC, and 2834 to 2469 Cal BC. So, yeah, okay, the outer brackets of that date range are, occupied 3 centuries, 3.5 centuries. But the remains span the middle and the late Neolithic periods. we could be looking at remains that date as early as 3600 BC, which, remember, is 4 centuries older than NG10, who was dated. That's the man whose Petrus temporal bones. Is that Am I right? Am I saying that right? Petrus temporal. I think so. Those hardened skull bones behind the ear. That his bones were dated to 3200 BC. So another interesting fact deriving from this is that no Bronze Age or later bones were found among the material that had been retrieved from Carrowkeel in 1911. And that is interesting because you'll know that a lot of the Neolithic cairns were reused in the Bronze Age. And there was evidence for early Bronze Age bowl and vase tradition pottery in some of the cairns as well. Fascinating. So, I said earlier, the 1911 excavation team left no stratigraphic records, no record of stratigraphy. Where, like O'Kelly in Newgrange and Ogan at Knowth were meticulous about these things. Exactly where was this bone found? And among what? Was it sitting on the surface? Was it an inch or 2 centimeters below the surface in loose gravel? Was it, 20 centimeters beneath the surface in yellow clay? That sort of stuff. That real precise detail. Anyway, I want to show you another. Bear with me just for bare bones. Never mind. That's terrible. That's not even funny. I'm not even making myself laugh now, which is unusual because I am my target audience. If I'm not laughing, nobody's going to laugh. I want to show you some of the human bones with evidence of cut marks on them before we proceed too far. Just give me 1 second. I'm just lining this up on the other screen so that I can share it quickly. I hope you're all enjoying this. Some of the comments. 30 what 100 BC Chungus Khan. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. But we're looking at a possible earliest date of 3600 BC plus maybe a few decades as well. Just give me 1 moment here now till we just put this on the screen. Show on stream. Yes, please do. There you go. So examples of human bones with evidence of cut marks. So here in I don't know anything about osteology. I don't know anything about human. I could probably recognize a cranium and a rib, and a pelvis, but the specifics, no. So we see here a cut mark on the neck of a right femur from cairn K, the base of a right fourth metatarsal from an unknown context, a left calcaneus from an unknown context. Again, I don't even know what that word means. I apologize. You can see the cut marks here, I hope. And a left lateral cuneiform bone from an unknown context. And I'm not sure if just that single photograph or all the photographies there is by Johnny Geber. So I hope seeing what I'm seeing there. Now, so there are what they call 2 outliers in the samples that we discussed. And if you remove the 2 outliers, what they're saying is that the model supports one continuous phase of burial activity, which began in 3454 to 3354, somewhere between 3454 to 3354, and concluded sometime between 2894 and 2786 Cal BC. Well, we used to say before Christ, but I think BCE is widely used now, isn't it? Before Common Era, and that's at 95.4% confidence. So the maximum range of use of the Carrowkeel complex for the burial of human bones is 34.5 centuries BC to 27.86 centuries BC. That's 3,454 BC to 2,786 BC. That makes it at least 150 years older than, for instance, Nouth, which I think yielded a date of 3,300 BC. Brendan asks a very good question, which I'm sure is in this paper, and I'm not immediately able to answer it, but if we find the answer, of course, we will give it. How can we be sure the cut marks were for burial practices and not for cannibalistic reasons? What would the difference be between dismembering a dead body and dismembering a soon-to-be dead body for the purposes of eating rather than the purposes of burying? I don't know what differences you would expect. I'm sure some of the experts involved. In fact, it is my hope and ambition to speak to some of these people. I did make contact with Dr. Lara Cassidy during the lockdowns with a view to getting her onto one of our conversation episodes. She's just incredibly busy. And she's solving all these ancient mysteries, you know. David is saying this is extremely fascinating. Makes me want to revisit Sligo soon. Yes, absolutely. Any avian DNA and peck of claw marks, Catherine is asking, in relation to, you know, the sky burial. I don't think anything is said about that. So obviously there's nothing definitive. So the earliest 4 dates are on cremated antler. And in fact, 7 of the 8 cremated antler samplings are among the 10 earliest dates from the complex. So what they're saying is it seems quite plausible and quite likely that the deposition of cremated antlers, presumably from red deer, yes, because that's the only type of deer mentioned in the study, represent the earliest activity at the cairns, which is, I think that's extraordinary. So the tombs were built, and the first thing that's buried there is cremated antler before you get human bone burial. What does that tell us? Some of the earliest human remains within Carrowkeel, or within the Carrowkeel sequence, are those that show evidence for post-mortem body processing in the form of cut marks. And this, of course, suggests that dismemberment was practiced during the primary use, the period of the primary use of the tombs. That is between 3,400 and 3,000, roughly, BC. And this is very, very important. With no evidence for bones with cut marks on them after 3000 BC. So the cut marks are found in the period when the tombs are in use, roughly 3,400 to 3,000 BC. Ben is saying that is 700 years of use, which is a good long time. It certainly is. Oh, sorry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen there because it seems to be slowing everything down. Cremated human remains occur broadly contemporaneously with the cut-marked ones, continuing from 3346 to 2887 Cal BC. After 3000 BC, unburnt bones, and in particular skull fragments, appear to predominate. Now, this is fascinating because NG10, the man recovered by O'Kelly, well, the fragments of a man among hundreds of bone fragments recovered from the Chamber of Newgrange by Professor Michael J. O'Kelly in the 1960s, was carbon dated to 3200 BC. So at Newgrange, you have this one individual is being treated specially or differently. You've got a lot of cremated bones, but among the uncremated material, there are these hard areas of the skull, petrous temporal bones. Whereas at Sligo, unburnt bones and skull fragments in particular only appear to predominate after 3000 BC. Now, the chronology, the accepted chronology, and the one obviously suggested by the dates, is that Carrowkeel is, as you can see, at least a century and a half, if not several centuries older than Brunabonia. So there's a change that happens at 3000 BC at Carrowkeel, where unburnt bones, human bones, and in particular skull fragments start to predominate the remains interred. And yet at Newgrange, we have this individual from 2 centuries previous to that. Interesting. Yeah. So this is hypothetical, admittedly, the authors say. But the model, based on the data, would present the cremated antlers at our Carrowkeel as the earliest phase of activity, and that the cut-marked bones, as in the human cut-marked bones, date to the beginning of the sequence of human bone depositions. Suggesting, of course, logically, if you extend that argument out with logic, suggesting that the earliest of the human bones deposited in the tombs of the Carrowkeel Keshcorran complex were subject to dismemberment. That dismemberment is the Middle Neolithic, the earlier practice, giving way to giving way slowly to then this period when, or not slowly, it seems suddenly, what am I trying to say? I'm going to read it. A diverse range of burial practices can be observed, initially focused on the deposition of dismembered human body parts until around 3000 BC, and of cremated human remains until circa 2880 Cal BC. But with a distinct shift from the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC, in other words, from around 3000 BC, there's a distinct shift towards a focus on the deposition of unburnt skull bone. And this practice may have similarities with evidence on the Mound of the Hostages on the Hill of Tara in County Meath. And interestingly, an unburnt human skull or a cranium, possibly placed in Cairn H. Again, there's some doubt as to the exact location of some of these remains because the tomb labeling system wasn't entirely, consistent. The unburned human skull or cranium placed in Cairn H, dating to approximately, this is a wide range of dates, 2834 to 2469 Cal BC, late Neolithic, in other words, represents the latest sample identified as part of this project. In other words, I think what they're saying is that human bones were still being buried in the tombs in what we would call the late Neolithic period. If you were to think about Brunabonia, you think about the tombs being built in the era 3200 BC, and sort of Dronehenge and that late Neolithic complex of monuments coming several centuries after. Isotope analysis. I kind of, there's a lot of technical detail again. I just wanted to highlight what I thought were the real important parts of these. So tooth samples from 14 humans and 1 canid, either, as I said, a dog or a wolf, were analysed for carbon, oxygen, and strontium. Now I'm going to just fast forward to the results, or the highlighted parts. I just want to make sure. And a lot of conversation going on, and thought-provoking comments. This is certainly, I knew you'd be fascinated by this, as I was. So they looked at the enamel samples and felt that it was quite possible that all of the sampled individuals came from the northwestern region of Ireland. In other words, that they were eating, hunting, farming locally. Now, there are a number of different geological backgrounds represented in the samples, but of course, this concurs with what they call the relatively diverse geology of the northwestern part of Ireland. The Brickleave Mountains, I believe, is what we call karst. It's Carboniferous limestone, I believe. It's a limestone landscape. Similar, I think, but don't quote me on this, to the Burren. But when I see terms like Carboniferous environment, I just start to say, hang on, can you explain to a layman what exactly that was, you know? Yeah, fascinating. Fast forward. Now, the DNA. If you want to have a look at the technical information in relation to the isotope analysis, please do feel free to download the paper. I think somebody has provided the link to it, and you can read it all yourself. So 6 of the 8 samples that were selected for ancient DNA analysis yielded usable evidence of endogenous human DNA content. That's between 8.11 and 74.87%. There were 2 failed samples, which both showed evidence for cremation. And as we mentioned very early on in the live stream, cremation is very detrimental to the preservation or survival of aDNA. Preliminary results suggest the ancestry of the 6 samples derived predominantly from a source closely related to Neolithic Anatolians, as has been observed for their continental counterparts. So again, adding weight to this oft-stated suggestion or hypothesis. I think it's more than a hypothesis, in fairness, that the people who built the great complexes of Carrowmore, Carrowkeel, Loughcrew, Brunabonia, etc., were descended from people in Anatolia. And as expected, these profiles, these genetic profiles, show high similarity to present-day Sardinians. So if you wanted to have a look at what the people of the Neolithic who built Newgrange and Cairn G and Carrowkeel and Cairn T at Loughcrew, if you want a good idea what they look like, then go to present-day Sardinia and look at the indigenous population there, and you'll get a good idea. The most common hair color in the group was dark brown or black, with brown eye color dominating, though variation associated with blue eyes was also observed. So dark brown or black hair and brown eyes predominating, which is fascinating. I don't know. Somebody here will know. I've no doubt somebody watching will know the answer to this. What prevalence do brown-eyed people have, say, among the modern Irish population? I mean, I think a majority of people today in Ireland have blue eyes, and that brown and green are in a minority. Am I right? Is that something that I'm mistaken about? And I do not want to state something that I'm not sure about. Perhaps somebody could even do a quick Google search and find out for us. Anna L is watching late today, but we'll catch up on YouTube. Greetings from Balbriggan. Great to see you, Anna L, and no problem at all. Yes. The Anatolian connection is fascinating, says Ben. Yes, reunite them back into the clan, merely wee bits to act as a gesture of being reunited with the person who passed. Well, it's clear that the practitioners, as I say, what we might call the undertakers, were very, very close to the dead, and yes, had to do what we might consider very nasty things, but probably normal to them. Another very important part of the DNA study of these 6 individuals is that there was no very recent relatedness between any of them. In other words, they were an outbreeding population, and there was no inbreeding, no incest, basically. The sort that we saw at Newgrange, which was first-degree incestuous relationship. In other words, NG10, his parents were most likely brother and sister, if not parent and offspring, like a father mating with a daughter or a mother mating with a son to produce this NG10 gentleman. More than half of the Irish have blue eyes, says Calvin Clown. I'm sorry, I know your name is probably based around, your handle is based around Calvin Klein, but when I see it, I can't help. I can't take you seriously. I'm sorry, I hope that doesn't offend you. It's just when I read your comment, it's like this guy calls himself a clown. How am I supposed to take him seriously? I don't mean too much by that, by the way. I knew here. So these are people who were here before the Tuatha Dé Danann. Well, I suppose the one distinction we should make, Alva, immediately is that the Tuatha Dé Danann are a mythological race. They're a mythological people. They're mythological deities. We don't know to what extent they're based on real people. Whereas the bones that are being studied for this study are obviously the remains of humans who were buried in the Neolithic, in the Sligo monuments. Josie is wondering whether the blue eyes were also brought over with the Scandinavian/Vikings. I suspect we're going to have all the answers to these questions over the next decade as a result of the sort of people who are composing these studies. I think a lot of these things will be answered. You know, Astro is in the house. I'm late and have to catch up. That's no problem. Anatolia thing piqued my curiosity a good bit. Yes, indeed. Anyway, I'm going to summarize there's quite a lot of highlighted areas in what they call the discussion and conclusion, which I hope that nicely summarizes the main findings of the paper. And if I have missed anything, I did my best to read it closely and to highlight the things that I thought would be most interesting, or the things that really stood out. And if I miss anything, I do apologize to the authors of the paper. But I do want to say this is an incredible study. It's so important. It's amazing in its detail. There's a lot, I think, that we can say with a fair amount of certainty, and then where they are being hypothetical or it's less secure in terms of data, they do say that, and I think it's brilliant. So just to go back, cremated antler, often in the form of antler pins. Actually, I should show you those. Sure. Look, why don't we? We're not too far from wrapping up. And we're early enough in the evening. We've often gone till 9:30 and later. So if you don't mind hanging around, I don't mind hanging around. I want to show you some of the fragments of cremated antler from Cairn Cave, photographed by Johnny Gebber. So just let me show you that while we're talking about this. It just takes a second to get everything to show on the screen. So just I'll apologize for that. Here we go. So fragments of cremated antler from Cairn Cave. While we're talking about this, so I'll read the paragraph or the sentence. More generally, cremated antler, often in the form of pins, is a relatively common and significant find at Irish passage tombs, not just at Carrowkeel/Keshcorran, suggesting that red deer held important symbolic significance for Neolithic communities. So if you think about this for a moment, and I haven't thought about it too much, but on the spur of the moment, I'm thinking that, okay, they killed the deer, and maybe they ate the deer, maybe it was part of sacrifice, I don't know. They made pins from the antlers, and that these pins were then burnt. I'm wondering whether these pins were the tools of people who had died. But where were those people buried? So they were burying red antler cremated red antler pins before they were burying human bones, you know. Lar Dooley is saying that I did say in my writings that our ancestors were dark-haired, dark-skinned, dark-eyed, short and stocky people from the area of Anatolia and Mesopotamia. Nice to see the experts agreeing with me. Well, in fairness, Lar, come on. That has been said for a good number of years now. That's not just something that's suddenly arisen. I think that has been said for at least 7 or 8 years, if not longer. Donna Ferrer is popping in for a moment and will listen more fully later. Brilliant. The most intensive phase of depositions at Carrowmore was between the years circa 3600 to 3200 BC. So again, we are looking at a phase of, or the most intensive phase of use, which predates the great monuments of Brú na Bóinne by 2 to 3 centuries. Yeah, there is a thing about there was a possible red deer bone in Cairn K. And they weren't able to substantiate this yet, but if it was substantiated, it would support the presence of red deer in Neolithic Ireland rather than the antlers being imported. So there you go. They're importing the antlers. From around 3000 BC, unburnt human cranial bone fragments dominate the assemblage, which I've mentioned already. And I think that is fascinating. So there's mention too of what are called high resolution studies into pollen and geochemical analysis of sediments in 2 nearby lakes. Temple Vanny Loch, which is 1 kilometre southwest of Carrowkeel, and Loch Minahan, 3 kilometres north of Carrowkeel. And there's some evidence there of Neolithic farming activity in the catchment areas of both lakes. And these reveal the most intensive evidence for mixed arable and pastoral farming, dating to the early Neolithic between 3750 BC and 3500 BC, which wanes after that date. And there was also detected at Temple Vanny a period of climatic downturn and increased rainfall from 3600 to 3290 BC. I have discussed this in my Mythical Ireland book as a possible reason for the construction of greater and larger monuments as a way to appease the sun deity. Just a comment or just an idea. Just check in the comments. I want to keep up to date with everything. Michelle Woodburn has one word. Wow. Yeah, exactly. Because when I read this first, I was gobsmacked, as they say. The earliest depositions at Carrowkeel, commencing circa 3600 and 3350. That's quite a wide range, but fair enough. It's 2.5 centuries. Appear to coincide with the onset of worsening weather conditions and a near cessation of farming activity in the area. So, this idea that farming and the introduction of cattle and crop husbandry was a panacea of some kind, that suddenly brought about a dramatic change. Well, it did, of course, but that it was utterly reliable. This is Ireland, after all. Even in modern agriculture, there's highs and lows. There's good years and bad years for tillage, for instance, and grass growth. There are long periods of wet. There's long periods of dry. The Irish weather is and has been for a long time quite capricious. The evidence from the complex may support the suggestion that changing land use practices, declining human activity, and climatic deterioration may have been factors in the expansion of the Irish passage tomb tradition. Fascinating stuff. So a number of factors combining, you know. Lara is saying that if and when Lough Crew is properly excavated, it predates. Wow. It certainly predates Brunabonia. Well, I'm just wondering. We talked about last week, Cairns pointing to Keshcorran. Would it point to Keshcorran before there was a cairn there? But Jean McMahon has pointed out that there's a fair degree of focus in terms of the eastern-facing cairns towards both Brunabonia and the Fornox complex, and the Hill of Tara, which is fascinating. That's an interesting one, Lar. And perhaps when you get an opportunity, you might expand on that. Maybe even in a post on Facebook that we can read some of the detail. I'll tell you one thing I would not do. I would not put bets on either outcome, either Lough Crew being older or younger than Carrowkeel or Brunabonia. The suggested and accepted chronology has always been Sligo first, Lough Crew second, Brunabonia last. Now, I know there are other complexes and there are other tombs and there are other types of monuments from that era, but the three main ones, that is the accepted chronology. But how can you have an accepted chronology for Lough Crew when you have no carbon dates? Interesting. At Carrowkeel, the dismemberment of unburnt bodies was contemporaneous with the use of cremation. At Nowth, for example, cremated and unburnt bone may, in some cases, derive from a single individual, which is, I think that's fascinating. In other words, a person may have been dismembered and some of their, or maybe naturally allowed to decompose, and some of their bones were cremated and some of them weren't. It's fascinating. Now, this is important. In line with the general view of passage tombs, with a minimum number of 29 individuals, or 40 if counting cremated and unburnt material separately, from 7 tombs, in interments that span a period of between 5 and 11 centuries, it appears that, and this is the important bit, Neolithic communities were selective in choosing who to bury at the complex. So not everybody got into the cairns. Certainly the ones that were under investigation, which are the big cairns up on top of the hills. Could we say the same about Newgrange, where, for instance, at Nowth, Professor Ogan said he reckoned there was maybe 200 adults, 200 humans represented in the burials, and at Newgrange, Professor O'Kelly said 5. Do we see at Newgrange a real selectivity, some sort of hierarchy in terms of only the most important people were buried there? And we know that one of them had a first-degree incestuous parentage, which suggests, at the very least, some sort of familial dynastic elite. The evidence at Carrowkeel shows that it is unlikely that the selection of those to be buried in the complex was based on sex or age, as the bones represent a broad demographic range. The substantial presence, around 35%, just over 1/3, of non-adults points to all age groups receiving, and they have this in quotes, equal treatment in death, and suggests that children and adolescents were valued members of their communities. And of course, we see that at Nowth, where we have the burial of infants and youths with adults, as if, you know, they're being buried in some sort of guardianship situation where there's an older guardian to see them over the threshold into the other world. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. And they suggest also that a DNA analysis, that's ancient DNA analysis, found no evidence for direct kinship among the individuals whose bones were deposited in the tombs. So, in other words, family groupings were unlikely to have been the basis for selection for placement in the tombs, which is fascinating because we know that some of the individuals buried at Carrowkeel are actually related to NG10 at Newgrange. And one of the, is it Millen Bay in Down? Was that the one where there's a relationship with Carrowkeel? So there are relationships across distance and time, but family groupings were not necessarily the basis upon which the bones that were buried in Carrowkeel were placed there, which is, I think that's extraordinary. Of course, notwithstanding major caveats. First of all, we're dealing with bones that were removed in 1911. We don't know exactly where they were. We don't know the stratigraphy. We also don't know how much material might have been removed, which again is one of the arguments about Newgrange, that the monument was open, as it were, reopened. The interior of the monument, which had been off bounds for centuries and centuries, possibly 4,000 years, was suddenly open in 1699 AD and remained open without any impedance to access until the 1880s, when the National Monuments Act was first passed, and the monument was given protection and a locked gate and a gatekeeper. On a population level, the ancient DNA evidence revealed a genetic profile in keeping with other Neolithic population samples from Northwest Europe. In other words, this isn't drastically different, with ultimate origins in Western Anatolia, but also more immediate affinities with remains from the Iberian Neolithic. And of course, this obviously reflects the importance of the Atlantic seaways in terms of the spread of agriculture and the megalithic burial traditions. Isotope evidence would suggest that a large number of the individuals buried at Carrowkeel are most likely local to that northwestern region of Ireland. Two samples, which were markedly different in their strontium and oxygen ratios, may have originated from outside of the region. And so to the conclusions. Yeah, Donald is saying Millen Bay NB6. Brilliant stuff. So look, you can see why this stuff is so, for me anyway. I don't know if the rest of you feel the same way. I'm looking at the commentary and I'm guessing that you're all equally enthralled and fascinated. I think that we are finally getting to the stage where the forensic experts, who are probably as good as any forensic pathologist or detective, are really giving us the answers, or leading us towards definitive answers to many of the questions we've been asking for the past several decades. Since in Ireland, since O'Kelly and Ogan began excavations at Brúnabonia in 1962. And I'm going to read the conclusions, and then we'll take time for some comments and questions. And hope you've enjoyed it. Gina, Makers, as they say, mind blown, you know. The multidisciplinary approach employed in the analysis of the burial population at Carrowkeel has served to enhance our current understanding of life and death during an important phase of the Irish Neolithic. Kathy May's lunch is over. She has to go. Kathy May, enjoy your afternoon. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again very soon, hopefully. Not in a straight line, says Barbara. No, certainly not. The results emphasize the highly complex and varied character of mortuary practice, which evolved over a long period. We were talking about how the study identified dismembered human remains, and this was conducted at a time when cremation was the main, when cremation was predominant. But there are near equal proportions of cremated and unburnt material. Male and female adults, as well as non-adults, are accounted for. And animals, both wild and domesticated, played important roles in people's lives and accompanied them in death. Fascinating. Through 38 new radiocarbon determinations, the project has proved a chronology for the complex, suggesting that its initial use occurs around the middle of the 4th millennium BC. This succeeds relatively closely with the earliest phases at Carrowmore, and predates most other passage tomb evidence from Ireland, such as the Boyne Valley tombs. Now, Lar is really putting himself, putting his neck on the chopping block there. I think if you got all of the current experts on the Irish Neolithic, all of the best archaeological minds, and some of the geneticists and the other scientists into a room, and you said, Loughcrew, older, newer, or the same age as Carrowkeel, I'd be interested to see the results. But I suspect a majority would say younger, newer. But who knows? And you know what? The day you're proved right, I'll be the first to shake your hand and congratulate you. However, if the reverse happens, you can say, Anthony, you were right. Your hunch was right. The extended duration and use of Carrowkeel for the deposition of bone is notable, covering more than half a millennium, and possibly, as somebody said in the comments quite recently, possibly 700 years. There were a number of changes in the burial practice over time, which potentially occurred in line with apparent periods of climatic oscillation, I like that word, and changes in Neolithic farming practice. A combination of multi-isotope analysis and aDNA sequencing has demonstrated that a relatively diverse population accessed the monuments for ritual and burial purposes over several centuries. They placed within the chambers of Carrowkeel multiple individuals whose deep ancestry was in Anatolia, but who had grown up and lived their lives in the environs of Loch Arrow, the Brickleave Mountains, or regions nearby, as well as a small number of individuals possibly from outside the region. The isotope analysis possibly hints that the majority of individuals at Carrowkeel sourced their food from two different areas within the region. Finally, the isotope research. This could reflect a level of social differentiation within the community, expressed through access to different food sources, or the presence of distinct populations originating from several areas within the northwest of Ireland region among the deposited remains. Wow. And the bibliography is very comprehensive. Looks like it might contain somewhere, but definitely more than 100, but maybe as many as 200 entries. So just once again, I'll actually put it up on the screen so that if you go looking for the download, again, somebody shared the link a while ago. I can't remember who that was. Was that Barbara? Somebody shared the link a little while ago. Yeah, I got it at researchgate.net. I can't share comments. Sheila Gunn has arrived late. Sheila, do watch the replay. This is deeply fascinating subject matter. I think you will agree. I just want to display once more the opening title of this paper so that you know exactly what you're looking for. Share screen, and when it does that, then I have to go show on stream. There we go. That's it. Rites of Passage, Mortuary Practice, Population Dynamics, and Chronology at the Carrowkeel Passage Tomb Complex, County Sligo. They are the authors, Thomas, I think it's Cador, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Lara M. Cassidy, Johnny Gebber, Robert Hensey, Pádraig Meehan, and Sam Moore. And of course, we met several of these in previous live streams. Of course, Lara Cassidy, for instance, and some of the others in our discussion about NG10, which was that last year? Was that? It was episode, I think, 98, 99, something like that. So more on the whole area of DNA. But anyway, there we go. Yeah, brilliant stuff. Really, really fascinating. And it's like a window into the past. And the amazing thing is, one of the extraordinary things is the extent to which modern people who visit these monuments have this feeling of connection with ancestors, right? I understand that. I've been writing about that sort of thing, and I've, from a sort of poetic and even mystical point of view, it's a very, very nice thing to envisage. Genetically, these people, left very little imprint, lasting imprint in the DNA of the Irish population. As we've said before, that, to a very large degree, the modern Irish population stems from the incursion or the arrival of the next people, the Beaker people in the early Bronze Age. That, like the mythology suggests, the Milesians came in, maybe they were the Bronze Age culture, and the Daedamans went into the She. Now, they never quite disappeared from mythology, of course. They're able to come in and out of the other world using the She, using the monuments, using the portals as access points. But something in me wonders whether that a stream of mythology suggesting that the deities who were identified with building and owning these Stone Age structures were defeated, as it were, or overcome or invaded by a race of mortal men who seeded the modern population of Ireland. Something that we now know through genetics is actually true. But that's only if you accept my hypothesis that the Danans, being associated with making the monuments, are the closest thing we have to some mythological, tenuous link with the people who built the monuments. And then, the Milesian influence, which is basically, that which has indeed left its lasting stamp. No, that's not a good enough word. Impression, again, not a good enough word, because a bloodline, So one of the things that wasn't addressed, and perhaps a more detailed reading of the paper by several of you will yield further information that I maybe did not see, but one of the things that doesn't seem to have been addressed to any meaningful extent was whether, and several people asked the question tonight, was whether these cut marks may have been made in the context of cannibalism or human sacrifice, or whether this was just a way of helping to dispose of the dead is a poor word, but to treat the remains of the dead as part of some broader ritual practices. It is fascinating. To be honest, mythologically speaking, the poet, the bard, the olive always envisages, I think, much greater levels of possibility than are offered by what we would call the data and the factual stuff, the empirical evidence. We are human. We have things called imaginations. A lot of us do anyway. Some people don't. Some people in politics, for instance, have no imagination. Some civil servants. No, am I getting political? I dare not do that at this hour of the night. But you know what I mean. That those, I'm not sure that we've changed that much in 5 to 5,500 years. I'm sure there were people there who dreamed, who made myths from their dreams, who had what we might call spiritual and otherworldly experiences, shamanic experiences, near-death experiences, going to see the ancestors and coming back again, hallucinogenic experiences. But that was a fundamental driver of everything that they did in relation to these great monuments, which we have to admit, something I would have argued about maybe 2 decades ago, but which I don't think I can argue about now. which is that principally they were places of ingress or access to other worlds, and other worlds also afterlife worlds. That the designation tomb is not that far off the mark, really, when you consider it. We now have dating of many of the bones retrieved from several of the great Irish passage tombs that really prove to a large extent what the archaeologists were saying all along. Just to mention the tours that are coming up, you may have noticed the ticker across the bottom of the screen that's moving constantly. I'm giving tours next week on the 21st at 6 p.m. There's a tour of the mythological murals of Drogheda. On Saturday, the 24th at 3 p.m., the Hill of Tara, Myths and Legends. And on Sunday, the 25th at 3 I think that time might be wrong. Apologies. Whoa. Not mind you, the details will be on the website. But more information on boyne-valley-trails.ie and booking of tickets. Booking is essential, by the way. The Brúna Bóinne one, we are very happy to have the use of the Brúna Bóinne Centre, visitor centre for parking. We'll be walking from there to Douth, from Douth to Nouth, from Nouth to Newgrange, and back to the visitor centre. It's a 12-kilometre walk. We'll have the legs walked off us, but we'll hopefully learn a little bit about myths and legends along the way. I'm just going to check the website. I'm hoping, it's 1 p.m. Apologies. That time on the ticker is wrong. That should say 1 p.m. on the 25th. But don't forget, as I said, that you can book your tickets on boyne-valley-trails.ie. In the meantime, I think that's basically all I have for you for this evening. I mean, when I say that's all I have, we certainly shouldn't look upon it, with any sort of disdain. We've had a lot, I think, of information to process tonight, and will make the basis, for me personally, will make the basis of some very interesting material in my own written work down the line. Absolutely. That has taken my knowledge on to a significant degree, a significant extent. Patrons have a number of exclusive things that to look at the moment. One is the draft cover, the cover of the 2023 Mythical Ireland calendar, which will shortly be available for pre-order and will be going to print in the next fortnight. Also, a nice coincidence involving Google Earth, which I wrote a blog post about today for patrons. And also the latest page of the transcript or the typescript of my next book, which I am sharing with patrons at the $10 a month level and above. So if you want all the juicy stuff, please do consider supporting Mythical Ireland at patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. Everybody's saying goodbye, so I better go. And thank you. Shay Payne says, thanks for an interesting episode. Look forward to the next one. Thank you, Shay. Didn't see you there. Not sure that I said hello to you earlier on. And thank you for joining us. And I'm glad you enjoyed it. Anya Ryan sums it up by saying, basically, that was amazing. Thanks, Anthony. Well, thanks to those 6 experts and their meticulous study. And, of course, thanks to Macalister and his colleagues. They may have caused some damage to the cairns of Carrowkeel, but the fact that the bones survived down to the modern era is a great, great boon for archaeological knowledge. Kelly says 12 kilometers is ambitious. I need some practice. I'll have to get some walking in between now and then. Alva says Slán August Bannacht August Tufane. Yes, we definitely have to say goodbye at this stage. We've been on for more than an hour and a half. Slán Chronological or Fud na Cruinne, and we'll hopefully see you next week for episode number 195. We're not too far off the 200th episode of Live Irish Myths. There may or may not, as I always say, be unplanned, unscripted live streams. I occasionally turn the phone on and do a live stream from out among the monuments. But do set your calendar if you're a new viewer. I think there's a few new names tonight Do remember, Monday, 8 p.m. Irish time, 3 p.m. New York, 12 noon Seattle and San Francisco is the time for live Irish Myths. So we'll hopefully see you next week. David Murdoch says, food for thought, a great episode. Thank you. Well, you're very, very welcome. Thank you. And with that, all that it remains for me to say is Ichawa Kulasov, Slán go Fóil, and most importantly, Tóg go Bugé.